I'm gonna save my thoughts on the Ghibli movies for an upcoming video I'm releasing, so I'll just say that these 3 Ghibli movies that I watched at the beginning of October were all good. To kick things off, I purchased and watched The Wolf of Snow Hollow on Amazon and thought it was pretty good. Jim Cummings is an exciting filmmaker.
Action! High tension, high tension, high tension!
He's not only making really good movies, he's making really good movies without Hollywood. For this movie, no major studios, no bullshit. This was still Jim Cummings' movie, just with the biggest budget he's ever worked with. So I wasn't at all surprised when I saw long takes, pretty interesting shots and camera movements for a low-budget movie like this.
What? Oh.
Funny writing, funnier acting, although the acting was a little inconsistent, and an emotionally volatile protagonist. The charismatic performance of Jim Cummings carries this movie, both comically and dramatically. He's usually the center of the humor and the emotion. According to the director himself, some of the films that inspired The Wolf of Snow Hollow include Zodiac and The Silence of the Lambs. For Zodiac, Cummings states that the cinematic language of the film is so cool, introducing the victims before their attacks acts as a ticking clock that we borrowed for Wolf. For The Silence of the Lambs, Cummings says, "I love this movie because it's a classic underdog story." He also says that there's a scene in the doorway between Buffalo Bill and Clarice that has many similarities to our film. For me, it's refreshing and gratifying to see that a filmmaker isn't shy to declare the movies that have shaped his or her own art. The Wolf of Snow Hollow itself acts as his way of deifying those movies that have influenced the way that he makes films.
In watching Zodiac and watching Fight Club, both of those movies are basically like shot and edited in sequence form rather than scene form. It's not like we have this scene and then the next scene. It's like all of it is kind of blended beautifully together. So it's like half music video, half narrative detective pornography.
However, I'd say my biggest issue with the movie was that the tone shifts were usually too dramatic, which often deflated the tension and took me out of the film. Also, the score was bland and uninteresting, and didn't add much to the experience of the movie. Overall, The Wolf of Snow Hollow is still worth watching, especially considering the fact that Jim Cummings wrote, directed, and starred in this movie. Personally, I just love watching movies where an individual has lots of creative control, because the result is usually a movie with a cohesive vision and a sharply distinct style. Next up, I watched Solaris, and it was great. I'm always nervous when I turn on an Andrei Tarkovsky movie, because there are always 2 things I'm thinking about. 1, Andrei Tarkovsky movies are awesome, so I'll like one when I see it, right? And 2, Andrei Tarkovsky movies are awesome, so I won't like it because I'm too dumb to get it, right? I was pleasantly surprised to find out that Solaris wasn't as complicated as I expected it to be. It's a long movie that tests your patience, and if you're willing to sit for 3 hours and focus on the environment, the experience, and the emotion, you'll find the movie to be captivating and rewarding. In his review of Solaris, Roger Ebert said that Tarkovsky uses length and depth to slow us down, to edge us out of the velocity of our lives, to enter a zone of reverie and meditation. In this movie, Tarkovsky builds atmosphere through the use of silence. The movie basically has no score, so all we can hear are the actual sounds of the world, including the ominous hums and drones. The dialogue is minimal, which is awesome. I personally prefer movies that don't need dialogue to tell their stories or to convey emotions and themes. Tarkovsky also uses color in an interesting way here. Some frames in the movie are monochromatically blue or yellow, and in the context of the scenes and of the film, these colors convey emotions like anguish and fear and even delusion. The special effects weren't perfect, but they didn't take away from the experience for me because they clearly weren't the focus of the movie. Instead, the environment of the movie relies on the mise-en-scène, which was often cluttered and chaotic and added to the uneasiness and the mystery of the world Solaris was trying to build. And I just appreciated what Andrei Tarkovsky was trying to say with this movie. The movie explores the unbearable anguish of being human, as well as the unbearable anguish of loving another human. Anyways, you should definitely check this movie out. You can find it on HBO Max and the Criterion Channel, and cool, let's move on. I watched Thunder Road, starring, written, and directed by Jim Cummings. And yes, we just talked about him 2 movies ago. I'd watched the short film version of Thunder Road the month prior, and I was pretty impressed by the performance that Cummings delivers. I can't imagine how hard it is for an actor to comfortably transition between emotions during a one take, so the fact that Jim Cummings did it so seamlessly was really impressive. I think Thunder Road was better than The Wolf of Snow Hollow for a few reasons. One, I think Jim Cummings writes and performs a very interesting and sympathetic protagonist, more so than the protagonist of The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Secondly, this movie has great editing. The scenes flow together well, which gave the movie a natural rhythm that kept me engaged. Again, Jim Cummings is a lover of long takes, so many of the scenes in this movie required multiple rehearsals and multiple reshoots. It was pretty clear to me how much Jim Cummings cared about the outcome of this movie, and so everything about it feels authentic and just not lazy. And some camera angles just work so well at delivering the comedy. There's a great Letterboxd review of this movie that says, "Comedy is tragedy in a wide shot." Jim Cummings zooms in. Folks, that's Thunder Road. I also just think that the making success of Thunder Road is so inspirational. Jim Cummings claims he didn't really write a thorough script for the movie and just rehearsed scenes by himself when he drove to work. The film itself cost $200,000, which is pretty much pocket change for any professionally made feature-length film. And it was critically acclaimed, and it was the reason why Jim Cummings was able to make a bigger budget movie in the first place. I'm just gonna end by saying Thunder Road is absolutely worth your time, especially if you're an aspiring filmmaker. It's streaming on Prime Video, so be sure to check it out. Two days after Thunder Road, I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a movie that's been sitting on my personal watch list for years. I don't think I have anything new to add to the table about the greatness of this movie. For me, it's a masterpiece, and I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5 because its themes resonated with me so deeply, especially that of believing in oneself and fighting for one's freedom. Yes, Jack Nicholson delivered one of the greatest performances of his career. Yes, Louise Fletcher is so good at being so evil and she f***ing deserved that Oscar, but I was so glad to see that every single member of this cast was great. I enjoyed every minute of the movie and was so moved by the ending that I spent the next day crying while listening to the theme of the final scene. Everyone that's ever said anything great about this movie is 100% right. That is obviously an exaggeration, but this movie is still awesome, so go watch it on Netflix. I then watched Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, a film I've been excited to see for such a long time. Andrei Tarkovsky's movies are strange and mysterious, and Mirror is probably his strangest and most challenging film for me. First off, the movie reveals information in idiosyncratic ways. The way it'll show a devastating war, for instance, is to show real footage of it, rather than dramatizing it. But more broadly, Mirror jumps back and forth between different points in time of the story pretty frequently, so I couldn't get a good sense of the timeline of the movie. And I still don't get the contrast he was trying to build between black and white frames and chromatic frames. As I said before, it's movies like Mirror that make me feel so dumb. But I still enjoyed it because it challenged me to see movies in a sharply distinct way, and I really mean that. I dare you to find a filmmaker who does it like Tarkovsky. Once again, Andrei Tarkovsky barely uses music. For starters, the predominance of silence builds atmosphere. But more significantly, I believe Tarkovsky just has so much faith in what he's trying to show to the viewer. And so the absence of music challenges the viewer to focus on what's being shown without relying on a musical score that can easily signal the viewer to feel a certain emotion. And most importantly, Mirror is a movie that encourages the viewer to feel rather than think. Tarkovsky uses natural elements very frequently, such as the wind, and the trees, and the grass, and the fire, to inform us that this movie relies on the texture of its environment, rather than the concrete drama of its script to provoke emotion. It's not as much about making sense of what we're seeing on screen than it is about completely immersing ourselves into Tarkovsky's landscape. Anyways, I cannot wait to watch this movie again. I think Mirror is definitely worth your time, simply because it should be on everyone's bucket list to experience Andrei Tarkovsky's meditative style of filmmaking. Mirror is streaming on the Criterion channel because of course it is, so watch it. So to prepare for the Halloween season, I watched Don't Look Now and Black Christmas and I enjoyed them both. My thoughts on each movie are in my previous Halloween special, so be sure to check that video out. I'll just say that both of these movies really emphasize the importance of video editing in making a horror or a thriller. And so to cap off my October viewings on Halloween night, I watched Session 9 and The Invitation with some of my friends. Going into these movies, we knew we weren't going to get scared because we don't get scared at anything anymore, so we were just dying for entertainment, and I think we got a decent amount of that. First off, let's talk about Session 9. Even though this movie has a surprise ending that isn't really surprising or even satisfying, I still had fun and found other things to appreciate about this movie. Let's start with...
You coming in? Hey. Fuck you.
I genuinely like the way this movie looks. I don't exactly know how to describe it accurately, but I will say that the movie doesn't look filtered and Hollywoodized. Let me try to put it this way. The cinematography of Session 9 kinda reminded me of Breaking Bad cinematography. No, I'm not comparing the two in terms of quality, I'm just saying they look similar, so chill. So anyways, the cinematography of Session 9 kinda reminded me of Breaking Bad cinematography, and I was just relieved Session 9 didn't look like El Camino. I hope that analogy helped. I think the production design is also cool. The Crookbride setting of the asylum feels eerie, but in a more subtle and believable way. Like, it's not a haunted house per se, but a place with a history that's at least mildly interesting. Now the acting. The acting.
You coming in? Hey. Fuck you.
I think the thing that really lowered my score for this movie was the ending, because it was ridiculous, but it was also really predictable, which made it even more ridiculous. I wasn't convinced of the new premise of the movie that the ending established, and I know the filmmakers were jerking themselves off with their thematic reveal at the end of the film. This movie's fine. If you want to enjoy it, watch it with friends, please. And finally, I also watched The Invitation on Halloween night. Look, this movie's also kinda fun to watch with friends, I guess. But at the same time, it's not only predictable, it is so up its own ass. Guys, I shit you not. I guessed the premise of this movie in the first 5 minutes. The strange and deceptive atmosphere that this movie tries to build the moment the main character walks into the house couldn't have made the premise more obvious. Cult member has a lot of facial hair? Check. Random and unnecessary vagina? Check. And an added bonus, the Zodiac Killer shows up out of nowhere and his name is f***ing Pruitt. The acting is The movie looks fine, I guess. It definitely looks more interesting than most movies, but I couldn't really derive a purpose for the way it looks. I think it's because this movie doesn't leave much room for purpose, because it's not that deep. Like I said before though, this movie is pretty fun to watch with friends. I usually found myself screaming at the screen most of the time, either through frustration or laughter, but mostly through frustration. Level with me, guys. If someone invites you to their home for a party, and then tells you that they're a part of a cult, and then shows you a promotional video of the cult that depicts someone dying on screen, at that point you'd surely leave, right? It's not easy for viewers to connect with characters that are blatantly stupid. And by the end, I was really hoping the movie would supply me with something beneath its surface level drama, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Anyways, October was one of my less busier months, and I expect November to be the same, if not even less busier. It's just the university life, I guess. Well, home university. I hate COVID so much. Anyways, I hope you all take care, stay safe, and obladi oblada.